South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to outline his top agenda for the country in a State of the Nation address. President Mnangagwa seeks national dialogue following weeks of violent protests in Zimbabwe. And recent wave of terror attacks heighten security concerns in Somalia. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. For those of you joining us across the country and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Investors moving to the north of Kenya drawn in by opportunities around the world's largest desert lake. We examine the likely impact of Egypt's decision to have a fixed quota for women in parliaments. And we begin in South Africa, where President Cyril Ramaphosa's much-awaited, much-anticipated State of the Nation address is set to take place this Thursday at the country's parliament in Cape Town. He is expected to mainly outline ways of fixing a struggling economy. CGTN's Travis Andrews has this report. Let's take a look.
The stage may be set at Parliament for South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address, but the nation's leader used another platform, which seems to have set a tone for what many can expect. Addressing investors at the mining indaba in Cape Town, Ramaphosa wasted no time in tackling some pressing issues facing his administration, that of corruption and state capture.
Called on those who are found to have done wrong things to be accountable, to be man and woman enough and say, I failed the country, I failed the people of South Africa. And so recommendations that come out will be acted on. There will be prosecutions. There clearly will be prosecutions, and some people will end up going to jail and go and wear orange overalls. And because of the
Ramaphosa's address received a rapturous applause, not just from investors looking at South Africa's mining sector, but the president's speech was also meant to carry the theme of change beyond these corridors. National energy company Eskom's woes were also addressed as it faces massive operational and financial problems that threaten the entire economy as well as jobs. Assistance, though, is coming their way.
We will not allow Eskom to fail. Restoring the energy security for the country is an absolute imperative. This government is going to resolve and solve the energy problem that has been given rise to by the challenges that Eskom is facing. So you can be rest assured that we are going to address.
But Parliament's National Assembly will prove the ultimate testing ground for the president's speech, as the entire nation looks to him to lead a struggling economy beset with significant problems. President Ramaphosa may have set the tone for what he expects of his much-anticipated State of the Nation address, but graft remains the number one issue on many people's minds.
He must stop the corruption, and those people who are implicated to the Busasa, he must do something about them. We want them to be brought in books. Eskom also, because they are corrupt, he must do something because we are paying and we don't know each and every time they must help Eskom.
I hope he's gonna talk also about the education, the corruption in this world. It really bothers us. So my hope and wish that whoever involved in that corruption can be brought in books so that can go to jail, because this is enough for South Africa.
So a lot is expected of the speech, but the president has displayed a willingness to engage matters of serious national importance head on, and there's no reason he won't continue doing the same when he addresses the entire nation. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
From Johannesburg, we're joined by Gabriel Cruz live. He's a researcher from the South African Institute of Race Relations to give us more analysis on the anticipated State of the Nation address by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Gabriel, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa appears to have plenty of issues to focus on in his State of the Nation address. What should he feature as a priority going into this address?
So I think that he, as you say, he's got a lot on his plate. If he's going to feature a priority, it might be the priority of lowering expectations and speaking with real benchmarks in mind against which the performance of the nation so far and the performance of the nation going forward can be measured. And those benchmarks can be applied to the energy sector, to ESCOM, to employment numbers, to GDP numbers, to, if you're going to talk about convictions, to conviction numbers of corrupt officials and so on. But I think if there's anything to prioritize that the president could, there's anything that the president could prioritize in his speech that would really give investors and South Africans the confidence to believe that his word is as good as his deed, it would be to set real benchmarks.
So what do you think his message should be to South Africans ahead of the May national polls?
I think that he's very good at public relations. I think that he's a very charismatic speaker. I think he's also very in tune with what most people want. The Institute of Race Relations polls show that Cyril Ramaphosa is by far the most popular political figure in the South African domain at the moment, and I think that's for the very good reason that he understands what people want to hear. And I think he's been saying a lot of things that South Africans do want to hear. They do want to hear about convictions, they do want to hear about ESCOM getting sorted out, and they do want to hear about a better future for all.
All right, you brought up a very important point. He's doing very well at the polls. He's gaining a lot of fanfare, so to speak. But what more can be done to gain public trust, especially when it comes to tackling corruption? What more do you think Ramaphosa needs to do? And of course, there's this issue of driving development. Talk to us about that, Gabriel.
Yeah, so I think in terms of tackling corruption, there is this view that Cyril Ramaphosa is unable to fire those members of cabinet that have prima facie evidence of corruption against them, the kind that in any reasonable democracy would make them unsuitable to hold the office, at least until they clear their name. And that Cyril Ramaphosa can't pull the trigger, so to speak, on those firings because he doesn't have a solid enough position within the ANC. I'm not sure that I buy that based on the fact that he is such an overwhelmingly popular figure in the country. I don't think the ANC can afford to do anything without him. And so what he could do to build trust would be to take further steps beyond Tom Moyane, beyond Supra in the Northwest, to really remove people against whom very credible allegations have been made, that either they're not fulfilling their function or at least their presence in their role of power undermines the credibility of the government and of the state that he heads up. So he needs to fire some people.
Okay. Gabriel Cruz, thank you for that update and report. We'll leave it there for now, Gabriel. Thank you for that update report from Johannesburg. Moving on to Somalia now. And the country has been hit hard by a wave of attacks against Army personnel and civilians. On Tuesday, a roadside bomb killed senior Army commander, dealing a major blow to the fight against militants. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo reports from Mogadishu.
The roadside bomb targeted Army officials in Danane, a strategic road that links Mogadishu and Lower Shabelle, an agricultural center that has become the epicenter of the war against terror. Colonel Abdisalam Sheikh Aden, alongside another senior military official and their bodyguards, died after an improvised explosive device struck their vehicle shortly after leaving the military base. It's the second major attack on Army personnel in the same area in less than 2 months. In December, General Omar Aden of the 12th April Division and his deputy General Abdi Ali Jamame were killed in a similar manner shortly after leaving the army base in Danane. Experts say the latest attacks proves lack of intelligence gathering among joint forces in the country. Meanwhile, militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for both attacks.
The government must ensure its forces have better knowledge about ways to encounter IED threats. Troops and senior military officers must be provided with anti-explosive trucks. Intelligence gathering between allied forces must be increased. These are the only ways to weaken the militant group.
The government forces have in recent months embarked on an operation to reopen vital supply routes in the middle and lower Shabelle regions. Militant group remains active in rural farmlands after losing control of major towns to Somali forces and African Union troops. U.S. drones have targeted Al-Shabaab encampments in recent months, killing hundreds of the group's fighters. Since December, more than 500 militants were neutralized by U.S. drones as Washington ramps up its airstrikes here in Somalia, with 11 strikes carried out since the beginning of 2019.
This latest attack is a clear sign that the government must come up with a different approach in dealing with the Al-Shabaab. Regional forces must be reintegrated and AMISOM must launch offensives. U.S. drones have made a difference, but it will not lead to a defeat of Al-Shabaab.
Mogadishu says an arms embargo has frustrated efforts of equipping its armed forces, leaving its troops vulnerable to militant attacks who possess the same fighting gear as Somali forces. Last month, the government of Qatar donated 68 armored trucks to assist the army during operations, but authorities want more support provided to counter the group's ever-increasing guerrilla tactics. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Meanwhile, the presidents of Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, Mali, and Mauritania have concluded a summit in the Burkinabe capital, Ouagadougou. This was part of the 5th ordinary session of the conference of G5 SAHEL heads of state. The leaders focused on issues concerning the operationalization of the G5 SAHEL joint force and the economic development of the sub-region. A total of 105 projects with an estimated overall cost of over $7 billion have been planned in all G5 SAHEL countries with the aim of building road, rail, and energy infrastructure. The heads of state also decided that the president of Burkina Faso should take over the leadership of the G5 SAHEL in 2019. The next ordinary session of the Conference of G5 SAHEL Heads of State is scheduled for February 2020 in Nouakchott in Mauritania.
This conference was a great success and raised 414 million euros. Taking into account the additional announcements made after the conference, the pledges now amount to approximately 431 million euros, of which 267 million euros have already been disbursed. The trust fund established to receive contribution from partners is operational.
We must first continue to strengthen and accelerate the operationalization of the joint force. Secondly, we must ensure that the social and economic projects that we have decided to implement can effectively be made visible to the populations in the G5 Sahel regions. Thirdly, we must work to improve the resilience of the populations, particularly young people and women in the various regions of the G5 Sahel.
The new extension of the state of emergency in Tunisia has divided the country's parliament. The state and some parliamentarians have justified President Beji Essebi's decision, while other MPs assert that arresting individuals on suspicion of terrorism without legal guarantees is unconstitutional.
Tunisian President Beji Essebi has extended the state of emergency across the North African country. Authorities assert that the decision was necessary to prevent terror attacks on Tunisian soil.
The state of emergency is declared in case of extreme threats to national security. It is the legal means by which the President of the Republic can guarantee law enforcement.
The extension of the state of emergency has divided the Tunisian parliament. Some MPs believe it is necessary to guarantee security across the country, while others maintain that the extension for the 4th consecutive year is unconstitutional. The parliamentary committees of Security and Defense and Rights, Freedoms and External Relations held a meeting to discuss this draft law on the organization of the state of emergency proposed by the Presidency of the Republic.
The security situation is alarming in Tunisia. We need extreme laws to face extreme situations. The state of emergency has some shortcomings, but it's the only tool to face the threat of terrorism, because security forces can arrest suspects anytime and anywhere.
The Parliamentary Academy shed light on the aspects related to human rights in the state of emergency MPs noted that the draft law submitted by the Presidency of the Republic to the Parliament requires major changes.
Extending the state of emergency for the fourth consecutive year is unconstitutional. The power given to the Minister of the Interior and the Governor under the draft law constitutes a threat to the individual freedoms.
In November 2015, a terrorist killed 12 presidential guards in a suicide attack on their bus a few streets away from the Interior Ministry in downtown Tunis. Since then, the state of emergency was declared in Tunisia. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
To Zimbabwe now, where President Emerson Mnangagwa has been leading efforts to have a national dialogue for the country after recent street protests. The main opposition, however, says that the dialogue with the president must be brokered by an external mediator. Mnangagwa invited 23 opposition leaders to a meeting to draw up terms for national dialogue. He is currently under pressure over the deteriorating economy and a crackdown on anti-government protests last month. The Movement for Democratic Change said it would take part in talks only if they are held under the supervision of the United Nations, African Union, or Regional Bloc Southern African Development Community. All right, for more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Farai Wakatuya in Harare. Farai, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time out to speak to us. Farai, what are the main highlights of that meeting between President Mnangagwa and opposition leaders?
Well, it was a pretty lengthy meeting. It started about 4 p.m. local time and ran well into the evening. They finished there at about 9 p.m. And each and every one of those parties that did accept the invitation and were represented there and were given an opportunity to make their presentations in terms of what they feel the situation is currently on the ground and how they believe the country can move forward. The key highlights and takeaways are the fact that everyone who was there is in agreement that dialogue is imperative. Dialogue is the only way for Zimbabwe to move forward, to address the political challenges, but also to be able to then take the country forward economically. Many people there say as long as Zimbabweans are fighting each other, then it will be very difficult for any investor or any business person to come and try to do business in Zimbabwe. So the confidence within Zimbabwe must start from within, and that was the key resolution that came out of there. The parties also agreed to take this process forward, that from now on, more meetings like this will be scheduled and further dialogue will be organized and facilitated so the country can then move forward and the political parties can unite the people of Zimbabwe. That was a key outcome. Unity of purpose that Zimbabweans must now circle the wagons and join hands to take the country forward.
What should we expect going forward, given that the main opposition party snubbed the meeting with President Mnangagwa?
Well, indeed, President Mnangagwa made mention, and just before you spoke to me there, I heard you talking about some of the conditions that the main opposition has set and laid down. President Mnangagwa was very clear yesterday that the process of healing Zimbabwe, the process of initiating a dialogue in Zimbabwe must start and must be led by Zimbabweans themselves, and that we shouldn't depend on any foreign countries or foreign bodies to mediate what is happening in Zimbabwe. He also says that, this process must recognize the outcome of the elections last year in July, as well as the outcome of the court ruling that was made by the Constitutional Court following a challenge by the opposition. So, given the fact that, these two parties are deeply divided on those issues, it's likely that they may not be able to come and sit down and start this negotiation or dialogue process now. But eventually, I think we know that there are efforts from the churches, amongst others, and civil society groups to urge the main opposition party as well as the ruling party to put these differences aside, to set their differences aside and to come together because, the main opposition is obviously a key player and a crucial player in this process.
Farai Wakatuya, thank you for that update and report. That is Farai reporting from Harare. All right, guess it's time for a quick break, but here's what's still ahead on the program. The African Union Summit addressing the plight of refugees, returnees, and internally displaced persons. And we examine the likely impact of Egypt's decision to have a fixed quota for women in parliament.
For decades, scientists working here have unearthed the remains of ancient man buried deep underground. But that's not all there is to Kenya's Turkana County. From February 5th, join CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa for our 6-episode series as she explores the cradle of mankind. AfricaLive. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Preliminary meetings have been going on at the African Union headquarters in the Ethiopian capital ahead of the main summit. This year, the theme revolves around durable solutions to forced displacement in Africa. In Somalia, a new policy has been unveiled to tackle the increasing number of displaced persons. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bello tells us more.
These displaced persons are the latest to arrive in Mogadishu. They are fleeing conflict in southern Somalia as security forces flush out militants from their remaining strongholds. The Somali capital is home to more than 500,000 displaced persons fleeing conflict and climate change. Estimates indicate that up to 2 million people live in displacement camps all across the country. Authorities say the influx of IDPs in major cities remains a national issue.
Displacement of people is a national issue and one that must be addressed. Big cities including Mogadishu cannot withstand the influx of displaced persons. IDPs are entitled to basic human rights and must work on measures to ensure they live a comfortable life in their regions.
The mayor of Mogadishu, Abdurrahman Omar Osman, recently unveiled the Banadir region's IDP policy that also applies to refugees and returnees who live in deplorable conditions in the camps.
Our vision is to have no IDPs in the city in the next few years. They will, however, be relocated to their homes and provided with much needed support. It's for this reason that we have created a durable solution unit to implement this policy.
To see that the government has a document to show the direction to help the IDPs is very positive. That's the way forward. We need to move away from a humanitarian emergency response towards something durable.
Despite improved humanitarian conditions, experts warn that food insecurity will likely to remain the biggest threat facing Somalia in 2019. Recent estimates indicate that up to 4.2 million people, or a third of the country's total population, require urgent humanitarian support. Authorities and aid agencies have appealed for more than $500 million to sustain aid operations in Somalia for the next 12 months. Somalia remains one of the most complex and long-standing humanitarian crises in the world. Experts now say that resilience programs must be implemented to ensure that farmers and pastoralists survive future shocks and are not displaced from their regions again. Abdulaziz Bello, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Meanwhile, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, is continuing with his 4-day tour of Tanzania. He met with President John Magufuli to convey UNHCR's appreciation for the country's long-standing generosity towards those fleeing conflict and persecution. The High Commissioner is also expected to spend time with Congolese and Burundian refugees in Yaragusu camp in Kasulu district. Grandi welcomed Tanzania's commitment to the Global Compact on Refugees that confirms the country's dedication to refugee protection. He also stressed on UNHCR's continued efforts in finding durable solutions for the over 330,000 refugees currently living in Tanzania.
The main thing he said was that he will continue to give Tanzania support because for many years we have been the home for refugees. This is because of the geography of our country. He applauded us for continuing this tradition.
Ahead of Nigeria's presidential elections set for February the 16th, thousands of women across the country are insisting on the need to have a violent-free election. The West African nation has a history of election violence, which has claimed lives and destroyed properties. Philly Haza reports from the nation's capital, Abuja.
They unite to make their message loud and clear. This is a coalition of women groups working with the United Nations, coming together to call for a peaceful election next week.
I came out here because I'm a Nigerian and I'm a woman, so I must join women to say no to violence and support peace.
The large turnout of women for this peace march ahead of Nigeria's election clearly indicates an increase in women's interest and participation in Nigeria's politics. They are calling on the government and all stakeholders to ensure adequate safety and peaceful conduct ahead of the elections.
Nigeria women.
Previous elections, like in 2011, where post-election violence left over 4,000 persons displaced and several houses destroyed, have discouraged some women from exercising their civic rights. Over 2,500 women in Abuja and thousands more across other states in the country are now looking to change that. The organizers believe women bear the brunt of election violence.
When there's violence now, we will be affected as women. Our children will be used as thugs. And these are the things that we don't want to see. We are saying that election is not, war. Election is something that comes every 4 years in Nigeria. And so 4 years is not enough for us to kill ourselves. We are saying that we need peace.
President Muhammadu Buhari, who is running for a second term against challenger and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, has reiterated his commitment to ensuring a peaceful and credible election. The Independent National Electoral Commission says security personnel are prepared if violence does indeed erupt again.
The Commission is committed to ensuring a free, fair, transparent, and above all, peaceful elections. And from the commitment of the security agencies, because that is their own portion anyway, to provide security during elections. All of them, each time they come to a meeting, they give the assurance that they have put in place greater strategies to provide a peaceful poll.
As for these women demanding a peaceful vote, many are confident this election will be much safer.
Personally, I've never come out to vote in time past because of the problems during voting. But with this awareness now, I think this election is going to be peaceful and I'm going to come out to vote.
Time has gone when they thought that women didn't have a say. Women should be seen and not heard. Our voices cannot be subdued.
And these women have good reason to get to the polls. Nigeria is facing high levels of insecurity, corruption and poverty, and they want to help elect leaders that will tackle the issues plaguing the country. Phil Ihaza, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, a female candidate has apologized to her followers almost 2 weeks after announcing her exit from the Nigerian presidential election race. Obi Ezekwesili now says she will focus on uniting a coalition of political parties to counter Nigeria's ruling party, the APC, and the oldest political party, PDP. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more on that story.
I ask for their forgiveness and understanding. I ask them to be ready to forgive me for withdrawing from the race, but I know that they agree with my choice because it is an expression of my values trumping any other thing.
Former presidential candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Obi Ezekwesili, making a public apology for the first time after pulling out of the 2019 presidential race. Her decision nearly 2 weeks ago sparked criticisms from various quarters. Her party, the ACPN, accused her of embezzling the millions of naira which Nigerians contributed for her during the campaign. Shortly after announcing her exit, the party pledged its support to the ruling APC, led by President Muhammadu Buhari. She denies allegations that she embezzled campaign funds and attempted to negotiate for the position of finance minister under President Buhari. Obi Ezekwesili, a former World Bank chief for the African region, says she wants to build a coalition of political parties against the APC and PDP, Nigeria's dominant political party.
Rebalancing the mindset that dominates our political landscape would require massive entry into politics by those with sets of dominant values that can overrun and upturn the current predatory mindset of the old other political class.
Oby Ezekwesili is out of the race, but not off the ballots. The Electoral Commission has refused to recognize her exit from the race for pulling out late. And there's mixed reactions to her exit from the public.
She represents the hope of the women, the Nigerian women, and they'll be looking up to her to kind of be the voice for them. And now she's stepping aside. It's quite disappointing, no doubt, but there's nothing we can do.
Everybody that comes out for election, at some point they might want to step down for some reason. So let's just allow what has happened to go on and don't send hate words and stuff, you know, on social media about her.
Out of more than 90 political parties, only 6 women were vying for the presidential seat. And Oby Ezekwesili was the strongest female contender against President Muhammadu Buhari and his main challenger, Atiku Abubakar of the PDP. Many view her early exit as a lost opportunity, maybe not for a win, but a good measure of how deep her message of sanitizing Nigeria's politics and eradicating transactional politics has sunk. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
In North Africa, there's a new push to increase representation of women in the Egyptian parliament. There could now be a fixed quota for women in parliament. Here is Adel El Marouki with more on that story.
Egypt is on the verge of entering a third round of constitutional amendments since 2012. In 2014, Egyptians have accepted to give fair representation of the society's fabric in the parliament. That has led to the biggest women representation in the parliament's history, increasing their seats to about 15%.
Women have led an honorable representation in the parliament during the previous years. They have done quite well in their job. Egypt got exposed to great political and economic women politicians through that representation. Women are 49% of the population, and they are more active in political engagement.
The current constitution, however, doesn't guarantee a certain quota for women. Parliament this week has initially approved specifying a quota of at least 25% in the upcoming legislative election next year. It means that the lower house will have at least 115 women legislators starting the year 2020. The upcoming constitutional amendments may also lead to another historic step in Egyptian politics.
There is another constitutional amendment in the vice president's role. The president will have the right to appoint more than one vice president. I hope one of them would be a woman. It's a dream for all of us, and we wonder if it could happen.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has been a vocal supporter of women empowerment. His cabinet has the highest number of women ministers Egypt has ever seen. El-Sisi has vowed to support bigger roles for them in the future. The constitutional amendments currently under discussion in the parliament are quite controversial. They aim to stretch President el-Sisi's terms in office until the year 2034. But including articles that guarantee a minimum wage for women in politics may make these changes more appealing, at least to many women. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Former Côte d'Ivoire President Laurent Gbagbo is now in Belgium after being released by the International Criminal Court. Belgium accepted to host Gbagbo after ICC judges ordered his conditional release last Friday. Jack Parrock reports from Brussels.
Laurent Gbagbo is now in Belgium, although his exact whereabouts within the country are unknown. AFP reports that Belgian immigration services were instructed to give the former president of the Côte d'Ivoire a 90-day visa here. The government agreed to host him following his acquittal at the International Criminal Court because his second wife and a child are based in Brussels. The foreign minister for Belgium says there will be surveillance. Laurent Gbagbo is not able to travel outside of Belgium and must return to The Hague when ordered by the court if the ICC prosecutor continues to appeal his acquittal. The 4 counts of crimes against humanity Mr Gbagbo and his co-defendant Charles Goudet were charged with were thrown out by the trial chamber judges on the grounds of a no case to answer motion. They were accused of stirring up post-election violence in Côte d'Ivoire in 2010, which resulted in the deaths of 3,000 people after Mr Gbagbo lost the presidential vote to Alassane Ouattara, who remains president. The judges believed there was not enough evidence for the trial to continue. The 2 men have been in detention at the ICC prison facility in the Netherlands since 2011. Mr Gbagbo has had his travel documents taken from him and must register with authorities here in Brussels once a week. Jack Parrick, CGTN, Brussels.
Ethiopian authorities are celebrating an international ruling in their favor to obtain back property rights for its traditional grain teff. A patent held by a Dutch company has now been declared null and void. CGTN's Gerum Chala has more.
For years, Ethiopia's staple grain teff's patent rights were held by a Dutch company which was unwilling to let go of the right. A court in Europe has granted it. Now a court in The Hague is said to have ruled against the teff patent holder. This is a news which is welcomed here in Ethiopia with a lot of joy. Ethiopian officials said the long-standing dispute with the Dutch company Health and Performance Food International HPFI bore a result finally. The court ruled the patent right of the company was null and void. Teff is widely known as Ethiopia's heritage. The famous Ethiopian food injera is made out of teff itself. For Ethiopians and Eritreans, both at home and in the diaspora, teff's injera is widely a favorite food exclusively associated with the 2 states and mentioned as a sign of national identity. Grumtara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
In South Africa, questions are being raised about what forced a colony of lesser flamingos to abandon their newborn chicks in the Northern Cape. Now, Cam Firstham is one of the 6 habitats in the world where these birds breed and is the biggest in the country. 2,000 flamingo chicks were rescued from the dried out dam just over a week ago in the biggest animal mission in South Africa. CGTN's Julie Shire visited some of the facilities where they were taken in Gauteng. Let's take a look.
The lesser flamingo is listed as an endangered species. A prolonged drought has threatened their survival. A mass rescue of more than 2,000 chicks has raised questions over what led to the disaster.
In the dam where they're currently breeding is insufficient water. It's been associated with the sewage plant that is not working appropriately. It should filter some of the water back into the dam. Plus, it's a very hot climate condition and low rainfall.
This problem has been going on for years, especially since 2016. So I'm blaming the government there, the municipalities, the nature conservationists, as well as the mines, even the public. So we're doing an in-depth investigation into the authorities there in order to expose them, and not only that, but to make South Africa aware that this kind of thing won't be tolerated again.
Severely dehydrated and underweight, when they were first discovered, the chicks were flown to several facilities across South Africa. Some of the most vulnerable are being cared for in Pretoria.
We color-coded them. It meant different medical problems. So yellow heads are eye issues. Then we have some red heads, which were problems with the crop. Then we had some yellow bums that had problems gaining weight. And then we have some blue bums, which are currently on antibiotic therapy.
Makeshift hospitals have been set up to nurse these birds back to strength. Baby flamingos require high-fat, high-protein diet, strict biosecurity control, and very specific conditions to grow.
We keep them in a specific type of environment with specific temperatures, specific humidity that is best for them to survive. Now, as you can see, there's little bowls inside their pens. We're starting to pull back a little bit on the fluids. We want to force them to start filter feeding and learn to feed naturally in natural behavior. It's to try and avoid human habituation.
The young birds will be integrated into a natural environment in about 3 to 4 months when they're able to fend for themselves. Depending on whether the rains come and conditions improve in Kamfersdam, they might have to be relocated to new habitats. Chilishara, CGTN, Pretoria, South Africa.
In Kenya, investors are slowly moving to the north of the country in a bid to take advantage of the unique offerings. TURKANA, which has the world's largest desert lake, was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has kilometers of untouched beachfront property. CGTN's Willista Yabwa now reports.
Turkana County in northern Kenya doesn't feel like your typical holiday destination. For decades, the sweltering heat and dusty roads in this remote region discouraged visitors. But today, 6 flights land at the Lodwar airstrip every day, bringing hundreds of travelers. Some come for work, others to visit friends, and an increasing number are now coming to enjoy the hidden treasures of Turkana.
The biggest attraction site is the lake, the world's largest desert lake, the UNESCO Heritage Lake, which is protected. It has a length of almost 250 kilometers beach length.
In the middle of the lake is an island, Central Island, a national park. Inside the island, there are 3 crater lakes, and inside those crater lakes are flamingos, crocodiles, and the popular tilapia fish. And there's more. Tourists come for the blend of the old and the new. Communities here are still holding on to their culture, while modern comforts are easily available. And for the religious, the Christ the Redeemer statue in the middle of town beckons. It is this contrast that has boosted the local tourism sector.
The current grading in terms of preferred locations, Turkana is coming 3 in Kenya after Mombasa and Mara. And this is something good for a frontier county.
But it isn't enough. Rolf Glow runs the Elias Springs Resort. Visitors to his hotel can enjoy the sandy beaches and nights in modernized huts.
Last time I was in Turkana, I flew over Lake Turkana, so I saw it from above, from the sky. And I said, when I come here next time, I will try to go here. And it's a beautiful place, just beautiful and very warm.
But the hotel never fills up. There have been sporadic bandit attacks in different areas.
Turkana is safe. And of course, the geographical location of Turkana places Turkana in some risks. We border South Sudan, which is volatile. We border Ethiopia. The southern bit is also volatile. We border Uganda.
This, coupled with the poor road infrastructure, has made it hard to attract local and international tourists. But things are slowly changing. The establishment of county governments and the discovery of oil has opened up the region for development. The Kenya government has also named 3 areas as resort cities. It has plans to develop the road infrastructure and build more tourist facilities. Peace-building efforts are ongoing. The changes could draw in more tourists.
The really beauty of Turkana, you face it and you feel it when you are here. When you see the star sky in the night, when you see the beautiful sunsets and sunrises, when you feel the strong wind, the strong waves in the lake, you feel really exposed to the nature.
The treasures of the desert are waiting. The tourism sector in Turkana County continues to grapple with many challenges. Investors, however, hope that Turkana's unique attractions will continue to draw in tourists and aid the growth of this sector. Willista Yabwa, CGTN in Turkana County.
In Senegal, a young man is changing the craftsmanship of the furniture-making industry by making use of oil drums. The result of his know-how is impressive. Here are more details on that story.
Furniture making is a craft that involves various skills and innovation. An ambitious and passionate young man is seeking to revolutionize this industry with a new look by using metals as raw materials. Baba Kathayim makes furnishings such as dining tables, cabinets, and even living room furniture at his workshop located in Yoff Layen. To achieve the highly conventional product, he transforms metal and practices the art of upholstery. But where does this inspiration come from?
It all started in 2007. I was cutting a barrel to make a manger for sheep. Suddenly, I was inspired, and I went to do it. I made my first furniture. They were not so good, nobody was interested. I tried again. On the third attempt, I accomplished the feat. In 2008, I started to make furniture in my workshop, and I displayed them at the entrance under the constant gaze of passers-by, also on social networks. Since then, orders abound. Per day, I can make up to 5 living rooms, plus an extra day for finishing.
Each week, Babakar invents new models for his clients, most of whom are attracted by the originality of the concept he uses to create the products. However, the prices may vary from between $200 and $500 US.
I was looking for something special. I came across some post of some creation made by Babakar. Immediately, I was seduced because it's a Senegalese who shows that innovation and creativity have no limit. The art of using recycled oil drums helps preserve the environment and makes these drums strong and durable. In terms of cost, it's more accessible, more affordable than buying imported furniture.
The dedication displayed by Babakar and his desire for perfection is a reflection of the beauty of his furniture. To meet the strong demand of his growing customers, Babakar hopes to one day put his concept on a larger market by building his own empire. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got a lot more news coming your way after the break. Here's a look at what's ahead. We continue to look at how the Chinese New Year is being celebrated across Africa.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. In Ghana, the Chinese New Year has been ushered in with a colorful display of Ghanaian and Chinese culture at a ceremony held in the capital, Accra. As CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports, the celebration of the Spring Festival in Accra is seen as a time to strengthen ties between the two countries. Let's take a look.
Chinese culture on display in Accra, thanks to Ghanaian students. New Year festivities providing a taste of China in West Africa.
The Kung Fu displayed by these young Ghanaian students goes to show how parts of Chinese culture are being adopted here. And the cultural exchange between Ghana and China keeps growing with the Spring Festival every year.
The event is organized by the Confucius Institute at the University of Ghana.
We feel that this is also an opportunity to join them and to cooperate with the Chinese and to get to understand them better through their culture.
Ghana and China already enjoy strong economic ties. The trade volume between the two countries hit $6.7 billion in 2017.
Our investment to Ghana is increasing. So I do believe with the more exchanges between the people, with the more investment to Ghana, our relations will definitely be lifted to another level.
Spring Festival in Accra is not just about showcasing Chinese culture, but Ghana's too. And Ghana appears to be quickly learning the language of Chinese New Year celebrations. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
In Uganda, the Chinese New Year or Spring Festival has also been celebrated in style. Shanxi, acrobatic troupe from China, entertained revelers. They displayed gymnastic moves to mark the day. The event brought together Ugandan and Chinese nationals. Organizers believe this is one way of cementing relations between the two countries. Egyptian officials have organized a special sound and light show in front of the famous pyramids and Sphinx at the Giza Plateau. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more on that story.
Overlooking the Great Pyramids, the Sound and Light Show is a must-see event for any tourist visiting Cairo. Using 5 foreign languages, it takes you on an impressive journey through history and time. To tell you the story of the ancient Egyptians and unlock their secrets and mysteries. But this week has been a unique one for the 30-year show.
We have introduced the Chinese language for the first time in this show. It wasn't easy. It was a culmination of huge efforts to translate and record the whole show in Chinese. Our staff even had to travel to China and stayed there for 3 months to record it with the help of our Chinese national radio team.
The Chinese New Year has been seen as the best opportunity to achieve this milestone. It's a result of the growing number of Chinese tourists visiting Egypt.
We will screen the Chinese language show every day this month because of the Spring Festival. Then it will be fixed on 1 day per week permanently. We will also add the Chinese language in our other sound light shows in Edfu Temple, Philae and Karnak temples. We are going to China in April to record the new shows.
The experience has been enjoyable for the Chinese visitors.
Today, the pyramid, beside the pyramid, everything is nice. The show, the light, and include the Chinese culture. And I think this is a good view for Chinese. And also, we hope that Egyptian and the Chinese will have good relations. And in future, the relations will be better and better.
We like this place very much, and to celebrate the Spring Festival, seeing the pyramids makes us very happy.
And the idea has been welcomed by Chinese officials.
This is a big transformation because it will help Chinese tourists to visit the sites and learn more about Egypt's history through the sound and light show in Chinese. This will also be a catalyst in increasing the number of tourists from China, as it will be an exciting experience for them.
Celebrating China here at the Giza Plateau is an indication and reflection of the unity and cohesion between two great civilizations, the Egyptian and Chinese. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got your sports news coming up next. Here's a sneak peek at what's ahead. Manchester City go top of the English Premier League after victory at Everton.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's talk a bit of football. English Premier League